Welcome to the very first episode of Behind the Real Estate. I am your host, Paul Ponitkoff. I'm a broker associate here with Remax Gold Elite Partners. I will be interviewing real estate agents so we can hear their real stories. Many of the stories that we will hear on the show will not be found in a real estate practice book. We can learn a lot from other real estate agents and their mistakes and find the education and the value within their stories. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce my very first guest, Mr. Don McDonald, co-founder of Remax Gold Elite Partners here in the beautiful Solano County. Don, it's a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul. I'm glad that I get to be your first guinea pig on the ugly and bad things of real estate.
Okay. I'm going to start the interview, and at the end of the interview, I'll give you the opportunity to share with the listeners more about your current services and how they can get into contact with you. So, Don, give us a brief overview of your experience.
Well, I've been in about 17 years now. I started as an agent, went to team leadership, went to vice president of the company, came back to team leadership, and now I'm basically kicking ass as a team leader with the Elite Partners.
Excellent. So, did you just wake up one day and decided, I want to be a realtor? Describe that day.
The joy of my life was I never had to figure out what I was going to do. I got really lucky. By the time I was 16 years old, I was actually a professional radio personality disc jockey in Los Angeles, California. So at 16, I was making $78,000 a year, and I didn't really need to have a job. It didn't seem like a job at the time. But you flash forward quite a few years, I turned that into an opportunity to work for Columbia Records, co-wrote, produced, and put together a #1 song in March of 1990. And then by the time Napster came around and ripped us all off and stole all our music, and they were firing thousands of people, and they promoted me 12 times in 3 years, I thought that life was great, but I woke up one morning and realized that I didn't want to be in that industry anymore. That was about 2003. So I spent the majority of 2003 really kind of researching what it is I was going to do. I had no clue. I knew I had told Columbia Records I was resigning and no longer going to work in the industry. I was just kind of fed up. That's a long story that we can share over a glass of wine sometime, because there's a lot of fun stories there. Talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. So I started looking at what I wanted to do. I have a passion for wine. I collected wine, so I thought, you know what, maybe I'll start a wine bar. That would be awesome, right? And then once you start to research getting into wine bar, and you realize, I don't know if I could spend 12, 14 hours a day drinking, sipping, talking about, tasting, and enjoying wine. At some point, I'm either going to be just a lush, or I'm going to probably not like that. And then I started thinking, gosh, what industry could I do that would give me all kinds of flexibility, lots of free time, the ability to be a dad and stay home. At the time, I was adopting a couple of girls from China and really wanted to focus on being a dad. And so I decided, let's look into real estate. And the crazy thing is I knew nothing outside of the fact that a couple of my friends had started a company called Zip Realty. And they had immense success. I mean, they went from guys who were handing out flyers on the street corners to use our service to multimillionaires within a year. And I was like, okay, maybe I could do that. So I got into real estate thinking about what it is I needed to do. I have a marketing background. That's all I did was marketing and business development really for Columbia Records. And so when I decided to research the industry, I opened up the phone book. Back then there was a thing called the phone book. You would open it up and it had big yellow pages, and agents would take ads out. So I thought, well, the most successful agents must have the biggest ads in the phone book or in the paper, right? So I called the 3 biggest agents at the time, right here where we live. We'll leave those names anonymous. But this is in 2003, right? When Craigslist was around, Napster was around, online marketing, instant messaging, BlackBerry. There was a lot of industry technology really taking hold then. And so I invited these 3 agents to quote unquote come to my house and have a listing presentation, because I thought I want to find out what they do. And we pretended to put our house on the market, and I had these 3 agents come consecutively one after another. And every one of them brought this big binder and showed me how they were going to put flyers on the front yard, and they were going to put a for sale sign in the front, and that this MLS was going to sell my house. And I remember closing the door. The last agent left, and I turned to my wife and I said, man, these people are freaking idiots. They're missing the boat. Not one of them talked about anything online. Not one of them talked about anything in marketing, from Craigslist and posting ads or any of that. And I just was like, this is crazy to me. I just got my butt handed to me from Napster, taking all of our music for free digitally, where you could literally download any song you wanted. And yet the real estate industry couldn't grasp that you should be online marketing to people who are online looking for things. So I said then, I'm going to do this. I figured I could do this. I took the next 6 months and I planned a budget and got everything together, and I launched my real estate career in 2004. And a little stroke on my back, in 2004, I sold 68 homes in 6 months. And 2005, I sold 140 homes. Literally, I sold 5 homes in 6 months, sight unseen, to people who didn't even live here, who found the property on Google, pay-per-click advertising, asked me to take pictures with my then digital camera that literally you had to pull out little discs in, and send them pictures via email. And they looked at everything. I went in, I took video, and I sent it to them. And this is in 2004. And I sold 5 homes, sight unseen, to people who had never gone to the house. I handed them the keys the day they closed and moved up with their truck. And then I started turning leads, online leads, and just by the hundreds every week, because nobody was really captivated the audience online. And I realized then that was really the career I was going to go after. And I've kind of just tore down those walls since day one.
Who was the first brokerage you worked for?
Gateway Realty here in town. They had been around for about 32 years. They're now part of the Gateway Capital Caldwell Banker organization here in town. And great people for training agents. I learned a lot from them and their great training program, which was awesome. I do have to admit, though, one of the funniest things, I don't know if it's funny, but they make, as new agents, when you come into your little new class, they make you sit down, and the teacher was an agent who had been around for a long time, and she was like, now here's the deal. If you get an opportunity, if you happen to get a listing opportunity, a friend, a relative, or somebody wants you to come over, it's very important that I go with you. And I was like, yeah, that's probably not going to happen. so I went on my very first listing appointment all by myself, and I got it. And I came back to the office and said, look, I got my first listing appointment. And they were really mad that I didn't use the mentor. But I just felt uncomfortable. Like I didn't want somebody sitting there going like, hi, I'm the newbie. I don't really know much, but here's my mentor, And I felt like confidence is everything when it comes to sales.
For the record, I did the same thing.
I just think it's important. Confidence is who you are, what you do,
For sure. Have you ever had to fire a client?
I think the hard truth is yes. I mean, you've been around. Clients, even more so today, are so demanding. And I think it's important that we as professionals know our business and know how to really work hard. But at the same time, when your phone is ringing at 10, 11 o'clock at night, texts are going off at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the demands get strong. And sometimes, just like a relationship, people who are in verbally abusive relationships. And sometimes clients can be very verbally abusive. They can just beat you up and treat you really bad. And sometimes they don't feel like you're doing a good job and you're just trying to do the best you can. And so I always find that it's important, first of all, to avoid having to fire somebody by entering the relationship cautiously, in the sense of feeling each other out and understanding what the expectations of each is. And when you lay that, you won't ever have to fire a client. But I have in the past. And it was unfortunate at the time because I just got fed up and I got tired of being abused. And I said, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. You can go find somebody else to help you in this process. But as a word of caution and wisdom to others, the best thing you can do is sit ahead of time and kind of iron out the expectations and ask the right questions of your clients and just get that foundation built so that you don't have those problems. Can I tell you about the time a client fired me?
Absolutely.
Because this is a funny story. This is another huge mistake you never want to do. So we live in the digital age where phones are connected all the time, right? So I was dealing with a rather challenging client, to say the best. And I was actually in the call with a friend of mine, realtor friend, Robin Jaricki, so she probably remembers this. And the client called, and I answered the phone. And of course, this was before the Bluetooth in the car, so I'm actually just talking like this on the phone while I'm driving. But the client's screaming at me and telling me this and telling me that. And I remember going, yeah, okay. And I remember saying goodbye. And then I immediately began to tell Robin what a moron and a jerk and how bad this client was and terrible this client was without actually having hung up. So the client got to hear all of that and decided I was no longer going to be their agent. So I was fired before as well.
What is the closest you've ever come to quitting real estate?
That's a tough one because I don't know that I've ever really considered just quitting real estate. I live for the deal. It's not the financial reward. It's not It's not even working. I know everybody wants to say that working with clients, I love helping them find a home. I really love the thrill of the deal. I love when somebody says, yes, I'll work with you. Yes, you can sell my house. And then I let all the tools, resources, and marketing, we do go to work. But that's the thrill I love. And so I'm constantly chasing the win.
Yeah.
And then I think for me, I surround myself with really great people who are great at taking care of transactions and paperwork and doing all the medial stuff that I get bored with. So I don't know that I've ever thought about quitting. I would like to work less in time. And so money and financial end of getting secure is one of the reasons why we built this partnership, so that we will all be able to grow together, work together, and eventually have that opportunity to not have to work every day. Choose to work. I'll probably always work, but I'll just be able to choose when and how often I want to work. And that's the goal.
What is your most painful mistake that you can help other real estate agents avoid?
Oh, the most painful mistake. It's interesting because I read a lot from articles and I love to tap into top producing agents. I love to tap into agents who are immensely successful and find out what it is that makes them tick. So I'm constantly, researching the industry, talking to others, and really just asking those kinds of questions, right? And I think that one of the biggest mistakes we make as agents is just the simplest basic bottom line, and that's the assumption. We make the assumption that they need our help. We make the assumption that they need our advice. We make the assumption that we're right. And a simple example is, and I just learned this, and you would think that 17 years you would know this, but reality is often we're sitting in a listing presentation where the sellers are asking us questions about how we're going to market and sell their home. And one of the most common questions is, well, what should we do with our house? Look around. Do you think we should paint? Do you think we should change the floors? And they start asking those questions. And often we want to jump in and tell them what we think, right? And sometimes that can be very overwhelming. They've poured their heart, their soul, and their life into making that their home. And now we're going to rip it apart and tell them, oh, you just paint this and change that and do this. And we think we're helping them. But sometimes the simplest thing to do is just say, tell me what you think you'd like to change. And I find that that's a mistake that just happens a lot, is we don't ask them what it is they want. Not just in that scenario, but what do you think we should pay for the home? What do you think you should pay for the home? Because we can ruin the opportunities, lose the opportunities, and certainly add a lot of more challenges to the relationship when we don't ask those proper questions. So I think that's probably the challenge, I think, is there.
What is one of your craziest stories that you just say to yourself, man, you cannot make this stuff up?
This is, I don't know how crazy this is, but it's a combination of probably the dreaded fear that every agent has. Before you get your license, while you're getting your license, when you're thinking about real estate, and when you join real estate, everybody tells you, your broker tells you, your trainers tell you, your mentors tell you, don't get sued, you're going to get sued, worry about getting sued. And we always worry about that because, we're being held to a strong, high legal standard. Much like an attorney. Attorneys hate for us to compare ourselves to them, but the reality is our fiduciary duty is very similar. We have a legal obligation to our clients that is defined by the law and often upheld by the law. But when you're newbies, you're afraid, right? You don't really know. So I was literally 2 months, my second transaction, really my second and third transaction because they were running concurrent. Here I am selling the home of buyers, right? So they're going to sell their home, then they become buyers to buy another home, right? So we go out, we find them a home, we have their home on the market, and the people who buy their home are in contract, and we negotiate a 2-week rent back so that when the sellers who are going to buy another home can buy a home, close on their home, rent back for a period of time while they move, close on the new home, and get everything all out and get this home ready for the buyers. Very common practice. Okay? So we negotiated that with a lease, and we negotiated with a deposit to be held in escrow. So the deposit was actually in escrow, right? And that deposit gets released back to the sellers once the buyers move in and the sellers have left the home. So it's all, again, very, very up and up. Did everything we're supposed to do. The sellers asked me for a 2-week rent back. So they then go buy a new house. And it was a home built in 1964, so it wasn't a new house. It was a new house to them. We did home inspection, pest inspection, roof inspection, even a chimney inspection, foundation inspection, and came up with 28 items on that list that we then subsequently negotiated with the seller to have repaired and fixed, right? So we hire professionals to go out and do the work. I'm not a contractor, not a general contractor. I know very little about it. I certainly didn't know that in 1964 that the washer and dryer then had smaller drain hoses than they do today. I had no clue. I would not know that. I would not know that when you hook a washer up and the water goes to a drain spout, that in 1964 they were significantly smaller than they are today. Wasn't on the home inspection, wasn't anything. So they close, they buy their house, and the first problem is once they get into contract to buy their new home and we're getting close to close, they call me one day and they say, Don, we don't need the 2-week rent back. We're going to go ahead and move out. Well, we already have an agreement for you to have a 2-week rent back. And I called, and sure enough, the buyers are like, well, no, we're not planning to move in until so-and-so, so they weren't willing to negotiate that out. Again, everybody agreed in writing up front. First problem, so the sellers, new buyers, are now upset. I didn't even know at the time that they were upset that they felt like I took their deposit and wouldn't. Their 2-week rent back money was also put in escrow and then paid to the buyers, right? So problem one. Problem two is, doesn't happen for 3 months later. They buy a new washer and dryer. And the washer and dryer is installed in their 1964 home, and the installer from whatever company was providing it says, we can't install the washer because the hose drain mechanism is too big for your downspout. Flash forward $675 later, and a plumber who comes and fixes that, and then I get taken to small claims and sued. And I was sued for, according to them, taking their deposit, taking their rent and not giving them their 2 weeks rent, even though they had agreed and had paid the buyers of their property. And then they also sued me because I didn't know that if they bought a new washer, that would be a problem. Now that seems like a cut and dry. I was like, okay, this is crazy. There's no foundation here. I've got a lease agreement, I got written contracts, agreements that they did this, and certainly nothing other. And I lost that case. And how do you lose a case like that? And I tell people, I said, the sad thing about our industry, and in California first and foremost, anybody can sue anybody anytime they choose. And often it comes down to small claims, which is, if you ever watch Judge Judy or anybody else on TV, it's who tells the better story or who is more sympathetic. And when I walked in with a suit and a tie as a successful realtor, I think that they just felt bad for them. And that just rubbed me wrong for a long time. Only time I've ever been sued, but it was an eye-opening experience to make sure that you always dot your I's, cross your T's, and never leave anything unturned, and always make sure that the clients are happy. So that's the craziest thing that I can say, and also a warning. Crazy stuff happens.
In your opinion, what is the greatest misconception about a real estate agent?
That it's easy money. And I don't make any qualm about that. We make a very good living if we work hard and do what we're supposed to do. Unfortunately, our industry, like most industries of any sort of employment, you have good, bad, and great, and not so great. And unfortunately, we have an overwhelming amount of agents in our industry that really don't do good jobs. So it has devalued what we do as great agents. And I think more and more, the consumer has gotten incredibly smart and really controls a lot more of what we used to. And the right agents who adapt in that will continue to be successful and learn how to demonstrate the value that I bring to the relationship, both with sellers and buyers. So I think the biggest misconception really is that many people think we just, we sell a $500,000 house and we get, $25,000. And it just never happens that way. I mean, we certainly can make good money. But at the same time, if you are investing the money that you make back into the product and back into selling and back into marketing, which generates both more business for yourself and great opportunities for the sellers and buyers to reap the rewards of their endeavors, then it's a successful entity and you can make a lot of money. It's probably one of the only industries you can really make unlimited amount of income in. But unfortunately, I think there's a good 80% of the agents who just kind of for lack of better terms, half-ass what they should be doing, and it kind of devalues the whole industry as a whole.
I was at a listing presentation last week, and I had a seller tell me, don't you think if you were to put the house on the market and sell it the next day, is it fair that I'm paying the same amount of commission selling it within one day rather than,
Right, so the incentive is to not do anything so it doesn't sell in one day, right?
How would you respond to a question like that?
I think first and foremost, when I go in, and you know this, Paul, what we try to really establish is what the value is we're bringing, right? So I feel pretty strongly that the threshold should be somewhere between the 10 and 15% range, meaning if you're going to sell a house, a $500,000 house, and you're going to get $25,000, well, you should be spending $25,000 to as much as $4,000 to make that happen. And granted, we're splitting that with another agent. We're also paying taxes, and we also have to pay our broker splits. So at the end of the day, we're making 60 cents on the dollar, or probably really more like 38 cents on the dollar because we split that half of the other brokerage. But still good money. But it's when you don't do anything, right? It's like I take the listing today, I put it on the MLS, the sign goes up, the flyer box stays empty. There's nobody working to sell your house, and it sells in a day. You shouldn't be paying that, right? But if I'm putting in, HDR, 4K video, drone, walkthrough tours, Matterport tours, high quality brochures, inviting all of the neighbors, putting in the hard work that we do often 2 or 3 weeks before it even hits the market, then we've done our job, and then there's the escrow representation, the negotiation, and so forth that comes in. So, but I do think that there is a point of value that we have to start looking at where we're going to end up at. At what point is it worth me paying you $100,000 to sell my $4 million house, right? What more are you doing? And so I think that that's where technology is starting to hurt the industry that doesn't catch up and embrace that. But I would have been prepared to handle that in a similar manner, in the sense of saying, if we don't spend the money, then certainly we can reduce it by that, right? But you would not have put that home on the market and then done all of the marketing. You would have done all of the marketing before the home went on the market, and that would have been an expense that you would have incurred.
What do you think the biggest problem in the real estate industry is today?
I kind of touched on it. I think everybody thinks it's easy money, from the big technology companies to venture capitalists who continue to try and find ways to just kind of I think streamlining the process is important. I think that, like for me to buy a car, I'm 100% comfortable with picking up my phone, selecting the year, the model, the color, the make of what I want, and having it delivered to my house. I do not need to go to a dealership. I don't know that 10 years ago I could have said that. I've sold homes sight unseen to people who did not tour the home, were not living in the neighborhood, and they knew what they wanted, they trust. So information technology is out there more than ever. But I still think that the biggest problem with our industry is that there's not enough of us collaborating together to take advantage of the technologies out there and move our industry forward in that way. Perfect example is just looking at the simple analogy that Zillow demonstrated. 15 years ago, nobody even heard of Zillow. And when Zillow started, the industry, the National Association of Realtors, California Association of Realtors, and realtors as a whole, even to this day, don't like Zillow because they feel like Zillow impedes on their business and because their information isn't as accurate. But newsflash, not only is Zillow more accurate today than they've ever been, but they're often more accurate than we can be. Their information is often more timely than we can get it. And the consumer simply doesn't need us to find homes for them anymore. And if we can embrace that technology and know where we fit in it and use Zillow to our advantage to help with the relationship, then we're going to be successful. But it's when we hold technology back and we fight against it and we don't want to move forward. We don't want to work with the iBuyer program. We don't want opportunities to impede what we've always done. And progress happens with change. It just does. And so and to me, the biggest challenge would probably be just opening the door to technology.
Don, I really, really appreciate you coming onto the show.
Absolutely.
If you would like to get in touch with Don McDonald directly, I've provided a link down in the description box below. Thank you for watching Behind the Real Estate. If you have questions that you would like me to ask real estate agents in upcoming interviews, please leave in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and the notification bell icon so you don't miss the latest interview. Thank you for watching.